Let me tell you a story about this woman who was planning a trip to Europe. So she goes to the hairdresser to be ready for the trip. And the hairdresser asks her, "So, where are you going?" She said, "I'm going to Rome." The hairdresser said, "Rome? Who wants to go to Rome? It's dirty, it's overcrowded, people are rude." I said, "How are you flying there?" "Oh, we're going to Air Canada." "Air Canada?" I said, "Why do you want to go Air Canada? They're always late. The planes are old and the flight attendants are ugly." I said, "And where are you staying in Rome?" "Oh, we find this place, detest it." "Oh, stop there. I know it. Everybody thinks that it's a great hotel, but believe me, it's a dive." I said, "And what are you going to do in Rome?" "Oh, well, we plan to go to the Vatican, and maybe I can meet the Pope." "Yeah, sure. You and 5,000 people next to you. If you're lucky, you may be able to see the Pope, but he will look tiny like an ant." "Well, good luck with your trip." After the trip, she comes back to see the hairdresser for another hairdo. And the hairdressers ask her, "So how was the trip?" She said, "It was fantastic. Rome is amazing." "Well, but you had to deal with Air Canada." "No, actually, we got this brand new plane, and because they were overbooked, they actually moved us to first class at no extra charge. And we had this amazing, handsome flight attendants who was so nice to us all the flight." "Well, but you had to sleep at the test." "Well, actually, we didn't know that it just went through a $5 million renovation. It's one of the top hotels in Rome, and because also it was overbooked, they offer us the presidential suite at no extra charge." "Yeah, but I'm sure you couldn't see the Pope." "Actually, we went to the Vatican, and we didn't know that this new Pope, he likes to meet new people. So there was a Swiss guard, tapped my shoulder, and said, 'Look, the Pope would like to meet you. So if you can follow me, he's expecting you in his office.' So I went there. There was the Pope, and he came to me. He shook my hand, and he said a few words to me." "So what did he say to you?" He said, "My poor child, who ruined your hair like that?" I want to talk to you today about be positive about your tomorrow. Be positive about your tomorrow. And if there is something that we probably figured out by now, these high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, based on the liturgy and our messages, is that everybody makes mistakes. We all do. But the problem is, because of those mistakes we make, we start feeling guilty. We live a life full of regrets to the point that it starts affecting our lives. And I'm talking about, of course, sometimes we make little mistakes, we don't pay attention to that, but what if when we made big mistakes in our lives? And then because of those mistakes we made in the past, that guilt is chasing us and is affecting our everyday life. But if there is also something that I hope we learn by now, the high holidays, is that we have to believe in second chances. We have to believe in second opportunities, not just in life, but also with God. And why do I say that? Because as a rabbi, I talk to people, and when they tell me their problems, the things they did that they know that they shouldn't have done, and my first offering is talk to God. Find comfort in God. And sometimes people tell me, I said, "Oh, I don't think God is going to listen to me after all what I've done during my life. I never pay attention to God." But I hope by now we know that that's not the reality. God is always waiting for us. God is always waiting for us to return to our Creator. But in life, we have to learn to overcome our mistakes and to try again, to believe in second chances. And it doesn't matter how bad your mistake was. Maybe you made a mistake in your marriage. Maybe you did something you shouldn't have done. You compromised. Now, maybe the relationship with your spouse is not the greatest, or maybe the marriage actually failed. and you feel that you cannot be happy ever again. Maybe you were hanging out with the wrong crowds, and because of that, you have bad habits that you didn't have before, and it's affecting your life. You have to believe that you have a second chance. Maybe you drop off university, and now you are pulling up your hairs. What have I done with my life? Well, doesn't matter what you did. High holidays is a message that we have to try again. We have to believe in second chances. Actually, I was reading that for people who start a new business, after 5 years, over 50% of people who start a new business will fail. But for those who try again, over 90% will be successful. So it's an important message to try again. This is exactly what happened with Jonah. By the way, if you're going to say for the Mincha service, don't miss the play-by-play by Rabbi Aníbal on the book of Jonah. You're going to have an opportunity to study this in a different depth. So Jonah was a prophet. God spoke to Jonah and said, Jonah, go to Nineveh, to the city of Nineveh, and prophesy there. Go there with my message. What did Jonah do? He knew what he had to do. He knew his mission in life. He went to the opposite direction. He ran away as fast as he could. He took a ship. He didn't even care where, just far away from Nineveh. In the middle of the trip, he was already on the ship. It was a big storm. And the storm was putting the ship in jeopardy. And Jonah realized that it was his mistake. And he actually started at the Shuvah process. He admitted that it was his fault. Now, the people around him on the ship, they weren't the nicest. What they did is they threw him out of the ship. And now he was drowning in the ocean. At that moment, God sent, you know the story, big fish that swallowed Jonah. Well, I don't know what was worse for him, if being in the ocean or being inside this big fish. I don't know if you ever tried to imagine how Jonah would feel inside this big fish. I tried to do the exercise, and the things that I can think about are, it was probably dark, probably smelly, he was probably lonely. But from inside that fish, from that darkness that he was going through, he continued with his process of teshuvah, and he cried out to God. He prayed to God, but in a very interesting way. He prayed for a second chance in past tense. He said to God, God, I called you and you answered me. I prayed to you and you responded to me. You saved me from within the belly of the fish. In past tense. He was still inside the fish, but he knew that God is a God of second chances. That if you pray to that God, you pray to God and you ask God for a second chance, that second chance will be granted. As soon as he finished that prayer, the fish spat him into dry land, and he was at the shore now. The text continues, next chapter. It says that the word of God came again to Jonah. What did God say? Exactly the same. Go to Nineveh and prophesy there. You see, Jonah had a second opportunity to fulfill his mission. And it's the second time that he tried, not only he fulfilled, he became the most successful prophet in the entire Bible. Why? Because he was bold enough to go for a second chance. Now, I want to share with you a couple more stories, because this sermon is also an introduction for Iskor that is going to happen a few minutes from now. The first one is about a man whose nickname was Easy Eddie. Easy Eddie was the lawyer of Al Capone. Do you remember Al Capone? He was, because I don't know how many young people are here, they may not even know who Al Capone was. He was a gangster in Chicago many, many years ago, a bad dude, okay? He was really bad. So Easy Eddie was a very successful lawyer, an unfixer. He will do whatever he had to do to keep Al Capone out of jail. Whatever he had to do. One day, Easy Eddie had a son. And once he started to see his son growing up, he started to have regrets about the kind of life he was living. He started to think that, yes, he had all this money, all these houses, all these cars, but what kind of legacy he was giving to his son? He can give him all the material things in this world, but there was one thing that he couldn't give him: a good name and a good example. So Easy Eddie contacted the police, the authorities, and he became a whistleblower and gave the police information about Al Capone to bring this guy down. Easy Eddie knew exactly what was going to happen to him if he would do that, and within a year he was assassinated. But his information helped the authorities to bring down Al Capone. Now, there is another story I want to talk to you about this U.S. pilot during the Second World War. He was flying missions in the South Pacific. And there was one mission that him and his squadron were flying towards an enemy target. Halfway the mission, he realized that somebody forgot to fill up the tank of his plane. So he had to turn back and go back to the mother ship. In his way back, he found an enemy squadron flying to his ship. And all his friends were far away and we wouldn't be able to make it back in time to defend the fleet. So this pilot decided to do it all by himself. He faced the enemy forces all by himself. He was outnumbered 10-1, but he was fighting with such courage, so boldly that the enemy got spooked. They turned around and left. So this man, for his acts of heroism, he was specially rewarded by the United States. Unfortunately, he died age 29 in one of his fights. But his hometown wanted to honor him for his heroism, because they realized that it was a perfect example for the generations of how to live a life of courage and heroism. So his city of Chicago decided to name the airport after him. His name was Butch O'Hare. So that's why the airport of Chicago is called O'Hare. But what many people don't know is Butch O'Hare was Easy Eddie's son. The one he made so many sacrifices for him. So I'm thinking about second opportunities. The last name O'Hare was synonym of shame and evil. And because of the actions of this man who turned his life around, now the last name O'Hare is synonym of honor and heroism. And because we are approaching Easter, even more than ever, I was thinking that this is the time to stop and think what kind of legacy we are passing to the next generation. Can we do any changes to give them a better spiritual legacy? Because it's up to us. And at the same time, we should be able to recognize all the sacrifices that our parents, our grandparents, our previous generations did, so we can have the kind of life we have today. It's a double thing. Recognize them and plan what we are passing to the next generation. So, with that in mind, I want to wish you Shana Tova Umetuka and the Gomar Chatima Tova for a year of optimism and second chances.